Hi there, friends, and welcome back to math class. We are doing chapter 4, section 6, multiplying fractions. Okay, and remember, since we've got rational numbers now, not only do we have fractions, but we also have positives and negatives. So let's remember our positive and negative rules for multiplying and dividing, because remember, they are different than the adding and subtracting. Okay, so remember that a positive times a positive gives us a positive answer. A negative times a negative also gives us a positive. That's our negative times a negative. They come together to make a positive, and it's true love, and yay. Okay, then we have a negative times a positive, and that one negative's all by itself. And same thing if the negative comes second, he's all by himself. Sad, that's little tears coming down my cheeks. Okay, super random, you're welcome. Now, to remind you how to multiply fractions, it's so much easier than adding and subtracting. So much easier. Do you want to know why it's so much easier? You do not need a common denominator. You do not need a common denominator. Hooray! Okay, all you have to do is multiply across. So you multiply the top of one times the top of the other, and the bottom of one times the bottom of the other. I can write, I promise, sometimes. Okay, and there you go. That's your answer. The top times the top goes to the top, bottom to the bottom goes in the bottom. Done and done. That's literally all we have to do. So multiplying fractions is so much easier. All right, so let's do some examples. We will have some mixed numbers in there as well, especially if you do the assignment on MathSpace. Lots of mixed numbers on MathSpace. All right, super simple practice. Let's do 1/2 times 1/3. All right, so like I said, we do not need a common denominator. We don't have to worry about that at all. All we have to do is the top times the top. 1 times 1 is 1. And 2 times 3 is 6. Ta-da! That's all you have to do. So much easier than the adding and subtracting rules. Let's throw in some negatives and some other things you might see. First of all, sometimes you might see a whole number in there. A whole number multiplied to a fraction. So we've got positive 2 times negative 3/4. Okay, so first of all, before we do anything else, we have a positive times a negative. That answer is going to be negative. Okay, let's just get that out of the way. Now we don't even have to think about it. Now, to remember how to make a whole number into a fraction, all you have to do is put it over 1. Ta-da! And now we have a fraction. So now there's two ways to go about doing this. You can just do it the way I showed you, which is we would do 2 times 3, which is 6, and 1 times 4, which is 4. Super awesome. Happy to be there. And now we need to reduce. So I'd have to divide the top and the bottom by 2. So we get negative 3/2. And then we need to change that to a mixed number. 2 goes into 3 one time with 1 left over. Now, if you want to skip this step or kind of do it, I call it pre-reducing. Apparently, other people call it cross-canceling, something like that. I don't know. But basically, it's the same idea of this dividing 2 here, but we can actually do it before we multiply. Okay, so if you notice that you've got a number up here and a number down here that have a common factor, for example, 2, you can do the dividing here. So we can, hang on for just a second. All right, so we can cancel out we can divide each of these by 2 here. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And you see now if we multiply across, we just already get to that 3/2. Okay? It will save you some time in the long run if you can get this cross-canceling, or what I like to call pre-reducing concept down. Let's try some more stuff. We've got -2/7 times 3/8. And so we've got a negative times a positive, so the answer is going to be negative. And if we just do it straight without doing our cross simplifying, we're going to have 2 times 3, which is 6, and 7 times 8, which is 56. Okay, but then I look at that and I know that they're both even, so I'm going to have to divide the top and the bottom by 2. Keep your negative, don't lose that. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 56 divided by 2 is 28. Now, if you want to try the cross-simplifying or the pre-reducing, really, we can divide by 2. Can you see we've got a 2 up here and a 2? These are both even, so we could divide them both by 2. So if we do that, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then if we multiply across, it's 1 times 3, which is 3, and 7 times 4, which is 28. So it just does this dividing before we do the multiplying. Works either way, but the cross-simplifying, the pre-reducing, just gives us smaller numbers, which are always easier to deal with. Okay, here's another one. -1/3 times -3/7. Now don't get confused with like either a squinty face or a winky face. There is no plus or minus on this side of the parentheses. That means that we are multiplying, okay? So you've got that. Now we've got a negative times a negative, which means it's going to be positive. And if you notice, there's a 3 on top and a 3 on the bottom. We can actually just divide by 3 right now, and that leaves a 1, and that leaves a 1, and that means we've already done our reducing. And so 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 7 is 7. If we didn't pre-reduce, it would have been 3/21, and then you can see we can divide each of those not by 7, but by 3, which still gives us the 1/7. So we just divided by 3 first. Either way works. Okay, now remember that this is when it becomes really important to change. This is Sanford's rule from Thursday, and I think if you'd done the assignment on MathSpace, this would have helped you along. If you change mixed numbers to improper fractions. That's just how to do this. For multiplying and dividing, I honestly don't know any other way to do this. Okay, so let's try some with some mixed numbers. Again, on MathSpace, you're going to have a lot of mixed numbers. There's not quite as many on the homework in the book, but there's still some. So let's do 5 1/3 times -1/2. So 5 1/3 times -1/2. So we've got positive times a negative. So the answer is going to be negative. But before we even do that, we need to change our mixed number to an improper fraction so we can do our multiplying across. So a reminder how to do that. You do the denominator times the whole number. So 3 times 5 is 15 plus 1 is 16. So 16/3 times -1/2. Now I hope you notice we've got an even number and an even number. So if you want to pre-reduce here, I would highly recommend it. If you choose not to, that's fine too. If you choose not to, we'll get -16/6. If we did pre-reduce, this becomes an 8 that becomes a 1, and we get -8/3, which is exactly what we would have gotten if we divided, that's a plus, if we divided the top and the bottom here by 2. You just divide early, and it works out. But now we need to change this back to a mixed number. So it's going to be -3 goes into 8 2 times, which is a 6. So 8 minus 6 means we've got 2 left. Okay. Oh, this one's a little crazy. Little crazy. -1 7/8 times -2 2/5. Woo! This one has lots of mixed numbers and all the negatives, and check that out. All right. First thing, when you have mixed numbers, change them to improper fractions. Nicely, we don't have to get common denominators at this point. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 7 is 15. So we've got -15/8. And then we're going to multiply that to 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. So -12/5. Remember, you keep your denominator of the fraction as you're turning it into an improper fraction. Now, we can multiply across. We'll have positive number, and I'm going to do a bunch of pre-reducing right now because I can, and it will make for smaller numbers. Okay? Because 5 goes into 15 3 times, and 4 can be divided out of both of these. 8 divided by 4 is 2, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So we're left with -3 times -3 is +9, and 2 times 1 is 2. If we didn't do that, if we just did, we would just get big numbers. So we'd have to do 15 times 12, and I don't know about you, but I'd want to use a calculator for that. 15 times 12, it gives us 180. And 8 times 5 is 40. And then we have to go about reducing it. So we can divide each by 10, and then those are each divisible by 2. And guess where we end up? We end up at 9/2. So it works either way. I just like not having to deal with quite as big of numbers. And then the 9/2, 2 goes into 9, 2 goes into 8, 4 times, and then that gives us 1 left over. All right. These are some pretty crazy numbers, huh? Let's do one more mixed number, and then we're going to talk about, we'll put one into a story problem and see if that works for you. Alrighty. -1 1/6. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's my daughter. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so -1 1/6 times -9/2. So that one's already an improper fraction. We just need to change that one to an improper fraction. So 6 times 1 is 6 plus 1. So it's -7/2 times -9/2. Now notice on this one, we have 2 2's, but they're both on the bottom. In order to cross simplify, you have to have one on the bottom and one on the top. Okay, so we can't cross simplify on this one, so we're just going to multiply across. -7 times -9 is positive 63, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, now we need to find out what our mixed number is, and so you can actually, if you want to, put it in your calculator and do 63 divided by 4, and that'll tell you how many whole numbers you have. So it gives us 15.75, and so that means it's going to be 15 is going to be our whole number. And then what I like to do is I'll do the 15 times 4 to find out. That's what gets us to 60. And then how much do we have left? If we just took 60/4 out, we have 3/4 left. Okay, and then for story problems, we have an example out of the book that says humans sleep about 1/3 of each day. At least I try to, right? Let each year equal 365 1/4 days. Determine the number of days in a year the average human sleeps. So we want to find out, so we've got 365 1/4 days, and we want to know what 1/3 of that is to find out how many days we're sleeping. Okay, this is some crazy numbers, but I still want to do it for multiplication purposes. So I'm going to change this into a really big improper fraction. So I'm going to do the 365 times 4 on a calculator, and then plus 1, and it gets us 1,461 fourths times 1/3. Now I'm going to just see if I can cross simplify. Let's see if that is divisible by 3. And it is, my friends, it is. And so I'm going to divide this by 3, which gives us a 1. And if we divide this by 3, it gives us 487. Then if we multiply across, 487 times 1 is 487. And 4 times 1 is 4. Now we're going to find out how many 4s can go into 487. So like I said, I'm going to divide that on the calculator, and it turns out to be 121. So that's going to be our whole number. 121 times 4 is 484. So if we just took 484 out of the 487, that means that we've got 3 left. So if you sleep 8 hours a day, that means every year you are sleeping 121 3/4 days. Puts it into perspective, doesn't it? And you know what? I wish I had more sleep. That was some interesting, crazy numbers. Here's a little bit more reasonable. I do a lot of baking, and I have a particular recipe that I would like to double because I want to bake for lots of it, and it calls for 2 1/8 cup of flour, and I want to know how much flour I need if I'm doubling the recipe. Doubling means you're going to do 2 of them. So that means 2 1/8 times 2. Okay, so we got a couple things to do here. We need to change this to an improper fraction, and we need to change this to essentially an improper fraction as well. So 8 times 2 is 16, plus 1 is 17, and keep the denominator. And then 2, just as a whole number, becomes 2/1 as a fraction. Okay, we can do a little cross simplifying, pre-reducing. I can divide this by 2 and get 4, divide this by 2 and get 1. And so we have 17 times 1 is 17, and 4 times 1 is 4. And then 4 goes into 16 4 times with 1 left over. Okay, so I need 4 1/4 cups of flour. And there you go. I think you're ready for multiplying positive and negative fractions. Yay, bye.